As you head into peak season and you have the holiday rush and you have Black Friday approaching, you have your massive big box stores, your Targets, your Walmart, even some of your more like specialty type box stores like Lowe's, Home Depot. They're all planning for the holiday rush. They all have Black Friday sales. And it's not just the big box stores, it's all retailers across the scope of things. And so you have customers that are project driven during this time of year. They have X amount of orders that they're trying to push out and meet a deadline. And so I think the biggest thing when you hit peak season is how do you approach that? How do you plan for that to accommodate those load times or those deadlines? Having a bigger picture, being able to analyze all of those shipments and location that they're going to, being able to comprehend what the transit days look like across the region that they're going to, and from which warehouse location they're going out of. You have some retailers that are sending out of, numerous DCs across the country and sending them into individual stores. So being able to locate what the transit day is, what the carrier selection should be, and keeping in mind too that most carriers, if not all carriers, they suspend their guarantee service window during the Black Friday and the Christmas Day rush. So you have FedEx and UPS on the small package side of things putting restrictions on those guaranteed shipment windows. A next day air shipment that's supposed to deliver by 10 may have an extended window of 3 or 4 p.m. that afternoon. In the LTL sector, you have carriers that do offer that premium guaranteed service type. It's not an option. It's not available. And the reason being because you have capacity restrictions. You have everybody that suddenly became a just-in-time type of shipper. And so trying to plan ahead of that and dictate these loads going to this area need to move this day. So there's going to be X number of shipments loading this day all the way throughout the week until you get dwindled down to your one-day transit lanes that you can afford to send out a couple of days before that deadline and be able to still hit it.
Amen. That's more than I know.
Right. We're going into Q4 and we're starting to plan out QBRs on the customer success side, what a QBR should be, what we like to have on those versus just a planned meeting in hopes of something to talk about.
Like, what does a QBR at Rocket look like? What should it be?
Well, QBR obviously is an acronym that stands for quarterly business review. But what we aim to do at Rocket is to make it super beneficial. Typical QBRs tend to go and talk about, bidding out freight, trying to get a little bit more efficient in terms of freight spend. But one of the cool tools that we utilize in our QBRs is called Smart Select. And it's basically a hindsight 2020 tool of looking at all of the shipments you had within a time frame. Let's assume it's the previous quarter, and looking at them in a way of, did you select the lowest price carrier for every shipment? Did you select the fastest carrier? There's a lot of metrics, but the idea is it records every quote that came up on the rate table for every shipment. And we can look back and say, if you were to want to do something better, let's say we want to save on freight spend, or we're going into the busy season, we want to have our ETAs in line and we want to actually get our products to the customers faster. That tool allows us to advise the customer on which carriers they used, but maybe which ones they should have used. And then looking forward, which carriers they should use in this next quarter to meet their needs. It's a very unique tool that provides a lot of insight in a forward facing, but looking back on the rearview mirror of how it went the quarter before.
Switching to a palletless LTL solution, how do you balance the cost savings with transit times and go through that and just kind of talk through your strategy for that?
So right now we are in the midst of peak season. It began in September and it's going to run until January 18th. So peak season has really been extended. And why is this concerning? For people who are shipping large items and even multi-carton items, those fees are around $84 to $100 per package. So if we take a couple of items like a sectional couch, for example, you could have 4, 5, 8 different cartons. 3 or 4 of them are going to be hit with a peak season fee. So when you start adding everything up, it actually becomes more cost effective to look at the LTL network. And there are a couple of different ways that those products can be shipped. They can be shipped loose load. And then also at Rocket, we've negotiated with our carriers to still be able to charge people as if it was loose load, but they'll put it on a pallet to really speed up the transit times. There's a couple of other advantages, not just in cost as well. One of the issues of shipping multiple cartons through the Parcel network is what's called a split delivery. So imagine the customer super excited, ding dong, the doorbell rings, and then they open up the door, they're expecting 6 packages, but there's only 4 sitting there. They're then going to go and cancel the order. They're going to be upset that they didn't get anything. And then the next day, they get the missing packages. It creates an absolute mess. Whereas with LTL, they really know how to do multi-carton shipments, whether it's on a pallet or loose load. Even items that aren't multi-carton, for example, e-bikes, they are generally a little bit heavier, they're larger, and the good old parcel network like to cartwheel them because they're big and heavy and one guy is trying to get them to the customer's home. A lot of times they can be shipped through the LTL network as well for a really cost-effective price, lower damage, and we can make sure we're hitting the right carrier who can improve transit times compared to some traditional LTL and also keep those damage rates low.
Yeah. Awesome. One of our clients does deliveries guaranteed by a certain date. The marketing team always makes promises that the logistics team has to cash those checks, and it gets to be pretty expensive. And if you don't plan properly, you're ending up just trying to do guaranteed service every time. Unfortunately, the carriers, even if you pay for the guarantee around the holidays, they don't offer it. And so they're not going to refund you your money if they don't make it. And oftentimes they don't. So proper load planning and being able to work with your logistics partner 2 months ahead of time and say, hey, here's our deadlines, here's our inventory, and here's what we need to get done. Can we ship to an advanced receiving warehouse if we're going final mile? Or should we just always use this carrier that's a little bit faster but not guaranteed instead of risking it for a better cost with XYZ carrier?
We do a really good job at identifying some of these problematic areas, which is what makes us so resourceful to the clients that we work with. So, with this being said, how often inside of your company do you find your marketing team promising delivery dates or deadlines to prospective customers of when, if they order by a certain date, that it's going to arrive by a certain date? So, what is the problem with that? Well, marketing team doesn't understand the logistics industry, generally speaking. They don't understand that during peak season, as you enter towards Black Friday, that there's capacity restraints across the country inside of the entire network. It doesn't matter if it's small package, LTL, full truckload. And with that comes delays from these capacity restraints. So what ends up happening is it forces companies to end up moving to a guaranteed thought process on delivery times, but guaranteed is not an option during peak season. It's just simply not an option because of capacity, because of the influx of volume, and because everybody's trying to move things out the door. Going back and being able to work with not only the marketing team, but also the logistics team in load planning can create a happy balance between when that shipment actually needs to get out the door to hit that deadline and what the last minute day can be to move that item in order to hit that deadline, keeping in mind that it's still not a guaranteed option. So here's my best advice. As you look at things going into peak season, the overall consumer experience is probably the most important piece to your company and the success of moving that freight out the door. So call up Rocket.
It's peak season. Guaranteed isn't an option. You could pay for it, still might not deliver, and there is no refund for that guarantee during peak season. So it's pretty vital for the marketing team to actually coordinate with the logistics team ahead of time and work with a company like Rocket and be able to do inventory planning, load planning, have multiple carrier options and contingencies to make sure that the consumer gets the package exactly when they expect it, but maybe don't overpromise and underdeliver. In the big and bulky world, the general consensus is that if you can ship it parcel, go ahead and do that instead of choosing LTL. LTL is kind of the backup option based on cost. But one of the things to consider during peak season is that the major parcel carriers, all of them charge peak season surcharges. They don't charge them by shipment, they charge them by package. As you'll hear next from Jillian, one of the things that LTL palletless carriers can offer is charging it by shipment, even for 8 or 10 cartons. So if you're shipping a sectional sofa, take a listen to this next part.
Peak season goes on till January 18th. I think that's the other big one.
Yeah.
These fees are going to go all the way through. So the other piece as well that I forgot to mention, and you guys touched on capacity. If you imagine you can move your these large pieces that go parcel today, move them over into LTL, that will now give you more space in your trailers for parcel for your other products. So it actually frees up capacity space for other parcel shipments. We certainly had that during COVID. It's the peak season fees. I mean, $84 to $100 per carton, and split deliveries, lower damage.
So the port strike ended, and it ended in like 2.5 days. But it didn't actually end. They just paused. And I have my own conspiracy theories on
Hmm.
that, and the fact that they didn't actually come to an agreement. They didn't even discuss automation. They just decided to pause until January 15th, which just happens to be after the election. And so
Election.
internally, I was discussing with my good friends that I didn't think that the Kamala Biden camp would want a strike to happen. It was bad optics. They couldn't make them come to an agreement because they had to be for the union workers. But they did make the problem go away, and at least until after the election. And then if there's a strike, only the supply chain and logistics world will care. Nobody else really will. It won't be mainstream media on January 15th. And it was mainstream media every second, every day. President of the Longshoremen was on TV, and he is quite a character, and it was entertaining. And I think some people that are pretty powerful made that go away without coming to an actual resolution. But they said, could you please just kindly wait until after the election? That would be appreciated.